Welcome. Today we have Benita Silver. Benita's passion lies in providing spiritual mentorship for high energy healers who feel their soul calling them to make a bigger impact. With over 40 years of experience as a psychotherapist, she is IFS Level 3 certified, an intuitive energy healer, Tantrica, and space holder. She brings deep presence, compassion, and connection to those she serves. Through her work, her clients embrace themselves with love and serve as a powerful source of inspiration and guidance to others. She particularly loves serving those who are entering into the not knowing, the alchemical urn of creation, where mystery, fear, and doubt transmute into magic and miracles. Welcome, Benita.
Thank you so much, Megan Mary. It's such a delight being here.
I love that last part about transmuting into magic and miracles. Yes, wonderful stuff.
Thanks.
So today you have been so kind as to open up your dream journal and share with us one of your dreams, which I really appreciate. And I know the listeners really love these episodes. So first, I'm going to read through the dream journal. And the title that you gave the dream is Henry's Place. And you classify it as a lucid / creative dream. So let's start at the beginning. There's 3 parts to this dream, which a lot of dreams have. So we'll read it and then we'll go through each part.
Great.
Part 1, I'm at my friend's home. Although it's not his actual home, I'm coming downstairs and I see a group of people, all of whom have been invited to a party. I have not been invited. It is very sunny in the living room and many people have congregated. I'm trying to decide if I'll exit through the back door or walk through the group of people and exit the front door. I choose to walk through the group of people, feeling that I'm fine with being seen. There's no need to hide. Part 2, I'm driving north in northern New Hampshire, where I used to live, on the sole road that would take me to the Canadian border. I'm traveling through the mountains of Pinkham Notch, ascending. It is cold and windy, and as is typical of the mountains, they are large and composed of granite. 3 large semi-trucks are descending and have large red brick tops of houses perched on their beds. Although the truck beds are horizontal, not following in line behind the truck cabin, taking up much of the descending road and not blocking my way up the notch. The tops of the houses are large, strong, and hard. They appear monolithic and somewhat ominous. I'm not sure if there are windows or chimneys. I continue my journey north with plans of crossing into Canada. Part 3. My husband Pierre and I arrive at a man's house whom we do not know. We apparently have parked the car between his house and a garage on the driveway. The garage is on the right side of the house as we face the street, and there's a little space between it and the man's house. We enter in the back door and see the man seated in his living room, dressed in a dark gray suit. He is not surprised by our entrance into his home, remains seated in his chair, and says nothing. He is probably in his early 50s, dark and handsome. Pierre and I are concerned that the police will see our car, and I suggest that we move it behind the garage where it won't be seen from the road. Pierre agrees that it's a good plan. He goes upstairs with plans to go into the man's bedroom and take some of the man's clothes for himself. I ask the man if I could borrow a sweatshirt or jacket. He's okay with it. Pierre comes downstairs with clothing in hand. The man does not react. Instead, he rises out of his chair and looks at the tall house behind the garage, his next door neighbor, which is Henry's house. And the man says that he and Henry are two of a kind and that they both are healers. Okay, I really love the progression there of the three different parts because it's so typical of really the non-linear manner of our dreams.
Mhm.
And sometimes we think, well, these three things have nothing to do with each other. But I love the puzzle of the dream story that they do, in fact. And they just recombine themselves into different ways. So that's a wonderful dream record. First off, just want to thank you for that.
I might add, Megan Mary, that where the party is being held is Henry's house also, but it's a different house, not his house.
Okay, so he's the friend. Yes.
So he's the friend, yeah.
Okay, got it.
So kind of coming full circle.
Yes. So that's where we're going to start, really, because what we want to do now is look at all of the people, places, settings, objects, and then we're going to get into the emotions, actions, and then we're going to look at it as a metaphor. So initially, let's talk about Henry. So when I asked you about Henry, if you could use 3 words to describe him, what 3 words would you use? And then I can tell you the ones that you had supplied initially.
Oh, okay. So just off the top of my head, because I don't have the record of what I wrote, but creative, industrious, and I consider him like a soul brother.
Okay, you did say industrious and creative,
Mhm.
and then also spiritual.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so you also added that he's an energy healer, an artisan who is constantly improving his home, building gardens, and creating temple space, and
Yeah.
that he hosts healing gatherings. So it's very important that the setting begins at this person's house, even if it's not his house. When we see a setting that is different from a place that we know, so we know it's a person's home, but it's not their home in this world, we want to look at how it's different. What made that house different from Henry's home in real life?
Okay, so much of Henry's real life home is first he's got an expanse of land and he's got rock gardens and gardens that he has created, an underground sauna, and his entire home is decorated with what he calls is bling crystals and different kind of artifacts, fine art, luxurious pillows and textiles and just all kinds of just beauty, just about every inch. Also mirrors and tiles and
So, how is the one in the dream different?
it's white and bright, and I'm not so aware in the dream of furnishings or any kind of artwork. It seems to be very minimalistic.
Okay.
And I'm inside, so I'm not aware of the
Mhm.
artwork.
Yeah. Okay. And that's good because I think it's important to understand the contrast between that place in the 3D world and that place in your dream, particularly if it's that kind of differentiation where it's plainer or if it's more elaborate. So that's important. So you go downstairs, and that is, for me, very much usually that initial motion of going downstairs many times, or out back, or in the closet, or behind the stage, are all those places where it's our shadow,
Right.
where we obscure things from ourselves, where we store things that we don't use, where we hide things. We're going into the depths. So
Right.
that being the very first action is very much indicative of that. Now, it's not a dark place because you see a whole bunch of people and it's very sunny, but despite it being so light and bright, you are immediately aware of the fact that you have not been invited.
Right.
And the fact that it's the living room and the way you describe it in that manner, the metaphor of the living room is very much the state of living, our living world, as opposed to the kitchen or the study or the bedroom or any other rooms that it could be. And the living room shows up again in part 3. So there is an underscored importance to the metaphor of the living room.
Right.
So you decide to exit. That is your primary action, is to leave the situation. And you're not sure whether to just walk right through them, go out the back door, go out the front door. You realize you have these options. And of course, a house itself in dreams can be so indicative of our mind itself, of our internal presence, and the back door and the front door also having strong metaphors. So it's interesting that you decide to just walk through them and go out the front door, and that you feel very comfortable and confident in doing so. So explain that situation.
Yeah, so in that situation, I was aware I wasn't invited, that there were all these people that had been invited. And it was like, okay, so should I just not make my presence known? Should I just scoot out the back door, kind of play it down? Or should I just be myself and just, okay, this is the reality, and hello and goodbye kind of thing.
Yes. Now, was this a lucid dream, and were you aware that you were dreaming?
Yes, to some extent, but
Okay.
not totally.
Okay.
I don't know if it's kind of
Yeah.
quasi. Yeah.
Right. Because if it was totally lucid and you decided, oh, this is a dream and I'm going out the front door, that would be different than
Right.
your subconscious decides you're going out the front door.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a good sign, especially if it's not a lucid dream, that you make that decision to go straight through that group of people, not to hide, not to try and get away from them, to make your presence known, and also your decision to not be part of it. So I think that that is a strong opening to the dream. And you mentioned holding your head high and not hiding. So a lot of independence there, a lot of confidence, and a lot of disregard for the fact that maybe you're not going to be included in what's happening in this living place.
Yeah, there was a feeling of neutrality that I felt. It wasn't like I was charged about not having been invited. It's just like, oh, okay, so this is what's going on.
Okay. So acceptance.
Right.
And comfort also. And then we go to the second part, where you're in this different scene and you're driving. Now, I like that you're driving because many times when we are driving in our dreams, it means that we are feeling in control of the direction of our lives. When we encounter a car that is broken down, we can't find our keys, we can't get the ignition to start, we can't steer it. All of these things that we've also experienced in our dreams, those are completely different metaphors from I'm driving myself. And so that's a good sign right
Mhm,
off the bat and underscores that agency that the first
mhm.
scene showed us. So you're driving on this one road, you say the soul road. I like that, even though you spelled it SOLE as in the only. I like the wordplay of the
Yeah.
soul road very
I
much.
use that all the time also.
Yes.
The soul journey, SOUL,
Yes. Yes.
SOLE. Right. Hmm.
Yes. And so it
Hmm.
is not lost here because
Right.
it is definitely it may in fact be the only road that goes to Canada, but it's also you're on this road to your soul, right?
Right. Hmm.
And I love that metaphor. So you're traveling through the mountains, you're ascending.
Yep.
So you're going up. You're not
Yep.
just necessarily going north, which we know geographically to be true in this reality, but
Hmm.
you're actually going upwards
Hmm.
on this ascent,
Right.
ascension,
Hmm.
also very metaphorical. And then there are these three large semi trucks coming
Right.
down. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I love how you explain how they were kind of just like filling the whole road. They weren't
Hmm.
staying in their lane, right? They're coming down almost sideways, is how I
Yeah.
visualize
Yeah,
it.
right. Yeah. They were triangular. So they're coming down the road like this instead of the long way. Yeah. Mhm.
Right, right.
Mhm.
But interestingly, even though they're not staying in their lane, they're not blocking your way.
Right. Yeah. Hmm.
So even though they're ominous, they're not really a full obstruction
Hmm.
for you.
Right.
And I think that that's important as well. And tell me a little bit about the connection here with your husband, because you mentioned that
Yeah.
he is from Quebec. And so, what is the importance here of heading up to the Canadian border?
Well, so he was just granted his green card, his permanent US residency last month. And so during the year that we've been married and the 2 years that we've known one another. So he moved here a year and a half ago. And during that time, he's not been able to leave the country. He has not been able to return to his home country of Quebec. And so we do have plans. And I used to live in New Hampshire. My son and my grandkids and my daughter-in-law are in Massachusetts. So we're going to be planning a road trip up through New Hampshire. He's going to see my old stomping grounds, and we're going to proceed to Quebec and meet his family and his friends. And yeah. And so now there's the freedom that he has, that he can
Hmm.
leave the country and I can meet his family and friends.
Okay. So,
Hmm.
without that background,
Hmm.
if I look up Canada in a dream dictionary or mountains or something else, it's
Hmm.
not going to tell me the
Right.
specific meaning that the mountains and that road and that place in the country has for you. And what I'm hearing is that at this moment in your life, it is specifically about freedom.
Yes. Yeah.
That
Hmm.
that is very much what that road and that exchange of residency and that being free to move about the country as it is, that is really what is about this place is about for you.
Hmm.
And I want to talk about the semi trucks. If I didn't know what a semi truck was or what it would be used for, what would
Hmm.
you say the purpose of a semi truck is for?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're like 18 wheelers, these long haulers that are transporting goods, I guess, across the country. To provide for the supply, providing a supply for the demand of the consumer.
Okay. Yes. And I think that that's important because however you might have described it could be totally someone else would describe the purpose of them a little bit differently. It's all in the word choice.
Right.
So that's important because
Hmm.
there's a little bit of this large, ominous, monolithic, the words that you use, a little bit, I don't want to say insurmountable, but there's this feeling of this is a really big, three really big things coming my way.
Hmm.
And they're not blocking my way, but their whole purpose is to transport something that is needed by others. And I'm wondering what those goods are in this case.
Well, yeah, they're like the peak of the houses. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These brick structures, which is unusual, I mean, in and of itself. Red brick. Uh-huh. And so, yeah. So it's
Yes.
kind of like, yeah. So you might have a couple floors and then you have the peak with the roof.
And red in dreams, the color itself can very much represent that assertion, that driving desire. And so it's interesting that you're driving and you also have this red color coming in. And then what
Hmm.
are they? But they're peaks of houses.
Hmm.
And the house, the symbol of a house is very strong in every single one of the scenes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the house can very much represent your place in your life. It can represent, of course, security and
Hmm.
all of those things as well, but
Yeah.
it's also your inner world, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so the peak of the house and it being brick is very much similar to the ominous like marbleness of the mountains. So we have all of this very strong metaphors of, I want to say the mountains are kind of immovable, right? But they're also
Right.
just very picturesque and majestic, but they're also very strong.
Right.
And these giant semi trucks with these giant brick tops of the houses, there's very much this feeling of strength, but well, is this movable or is this immovable?
Hmm.
And so, well, it'll make more sense when we get into part three because there are three of those trucks. And the three many times can represent the triad. It can be so many things, whether you look at it from a mystical or philosophical viewpoint. It can be the mind, body, and spirit. It can be the growth of the one out of the two. It can be the balance of the three. And
Hmm.
so let's go to the third part now. So
Can
now,
I ask a
yeah,
question though? Because
yes.
I'm one of the things that just kind of kicked up in my head was I was wondering when I had this dream, and because I don't remember, but it was pretty soon, right before I submitted it to you. And my sense is that at the time, as I recall, we had not yet been given the authorization from the US for Pierre's permanent residency. So we were waiting, we didn't know, and yeah, I'm not even sure. I think we had submitted the paperwork or we were in process of submitting the paperwork, and there were a lot of bells and whistles and hoops to jump through so to get everything in.
Okay, so that really plays a large part into this
Yeah.
because that's
Hmm.
that is this is this movable? Is this immovable? Is this insurmountable like the mountains, or is this movable? Is the home going to be moving? And here are these
Yeah.
giant transportation things coming down from that area with the
Mhm,
homes.
mhm.
And he's trying to move his home from the north into the southern lands at that point. And
Right.
so there's this ominous, not sure. I'm not sure if there are windows or chimneys. I'm not sure if this is something I need to be concerned about or not. It's not completely blocking me, but it's definitely looking like it could be an issue, it
Mhm,
could be dangerous. So
mhm.
that's definitely playing into this whole scenario of what's happening in your life, for sure.
Right. And the fact that there were no windows or chimneys, it was there's no way out.
Oh, yes. I was going to say outlet.
Yeah, outlet, right. No,
Yes.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So that's
Yeah.
also very telling for sure.
Yeah, right.
So then enters another house, and this time your husband's there. So
Mhm,
part three, you and your husband arrive at another man's house whom you do not know.
mhm,
And we have the house and we have the garage. And you go in the back door.
mhm.
Mm,
Right.
yes. So that's important because you don't even know the person, but you enter through the back door as if
Mhm,
you know the way.
mhm.
So then you get in there, and where do we enter? Where are we again? It's like a bookend, the living
Mhm,
room.
mhm. You're right.
Except this time there's the man in the gray suit. So
Mm.
tell me a little bit about this man.
Yeah, just dark, handsome, nondescript otherwise. I have no idea. Yeah, I didn't really get a sense of his facial features or if he had a beard or not. He was like in his 50s, is the sense I had. And I guess in retrospect, the fact that we come into his home and he just remained seated, he wasn't disturbed, he wasn't surprised or shocked or and he just continued to sit there and and then Pierre goes up the stairs and
And
that's okay too.
mhm.
Hmm.
But there's concern on your part.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
So you're concerned about the police seeing your
Uh-huh.
car. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was like the car was parked between his house and the garage. And it was like, oh, well, if the police pass by, they will see our car there. And I don't know what that was about. And so that's why I was like, okay, well, maybe we need to move it. We weren't engaging in any kind of criminal activity in this man's house. So, I
Okay.
mean, mhm,
But there is concern that the police, and so the police are a new group of people introduced. So they're a
mhm,
new aspect of someone that you're concerned is going to find out. And so you think you should move it behind the garage, again, behind.
mhm,
And that's so it won't be seen.
mhm.
So there's something there that is, there's an attempt to obscure. And Pierre agrees that it's a good idea. Then he goes upstairs with the plans to take the clothes. Now, tell me about that exchange when he goes to take the clothes.
Yeah, part of his way of being part of the culture, I believe, is he's going to get his need met. And so he had to get some new clothes, some other clothes in order to change into. And my sense in the dream was it was something like a jacket, something warm. And I know I asked for a sweatshirt or a jacket, something warm also, but also insulated. So maybe protective to some
Yes,
extent. Hmm.
definitely. Yes. So many times when someone appears in the dream that we don't know, They can be representative of an aspect of ourselves, or they can be a spirit guide, or they can be a loved one from beyond. But if it's someone that we don't know many times, there's a reason that that person is present. And the way that they act, or the messages that they bring, or the things that they do, tell us and give us clues about a part of ourselves. And so I think you're on the right track there with it's not just clothing. He's not going to get a pair of shoes. This is very much about insulation and warmth and protection from the cold and windy that was present in part 2.
Right.
That is very much what you're both seeking from this stranger. And so at the end, we basically hear that he gets out of his chair and he looks at the house, Henry's house, and then announces that him and Henry are both healers. And that to me really speaks to the fact that Henry represents that soul aspect. You had said that Henry was your soul brother. And in part 2, you're on the soul road. And when you get to part 3, this unknown man basically pronounces that Henry and him are two of a kind and both healers. Right. And so it's very possible that this gray man in the suit is part of an aspect of you that is attempting to merge with the soul brother. So the two parts, because when we have two, it's very much a duality. It's a reconciling of those opposites. And sometimes it can be a reconciling of different viewpoints. It can be a duality in a relationship. It can be the dynamic between yourself and your husband, but it can also be the dynamic between aspects of yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And so the person being dressed in gray, the gray is the complete opposite of red.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the thing that keeps playing in my mind about he's wearing a suit. It's like he's formally attired, but he's sitting in his living room. And yeah, and then I asked for a sweatshirt. So it's like something casual, warm, comfortable.
Yes.
And I do see that very possibly of the dynamic that I've been undergoing also, in terms of that I'm going to be letting go of my psychotherapy license in June. And the formality and all that.
Yes. So the man in the suit can represent that, as well as the changing the nationalities, all of that situation that your husband's going through. He can represent that. The shielding, I think, is very represented by the jacket, the sweatshirt. Because a jacket itself is a shield from the cold. It's seeking that comfort in that shielding is also present just in the situation. And I think it has multi-layers of your psychotherapy transition, layers of the nationality transition for your husband, layers of the protection, because we go from part 1 where you're very independent and confident to part 2 where you're starting to see that you're on the road to freedom, but yet feeling very isolated in that journey, and seeing the coming challenges that you're not sure if they're going to be insurmountable or not, even though you realize that you are driving yourself and that you are ascending on that road. And then we come to the third part where you're at yet another house and seeking shelter, essentially seeking that safety. So you are thinking about hiding the car, and you're thinking about getting clothing and gathering resources and gathering comfort and put yourself in that situation. And then the
Mm-hmm.
man, the one action that he does is to really point out that additional house. And by looking in that direction and saying
Mm-hmm.
that two of making that profound statement that him and Henry are two of a kind. And so by presenting himself as a healer, he's really letting you know about that aspect of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that you are able to overcome these potentially ominous and insurmountable large moving objects coming your way, and that you are
Mm-hmm.
able to continue to drive yourself on that road, that you can
Mm-hmm.
bring that confidence and that independence from part one into part three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thought that just arose was like the garage.
Mm-hmm.
It's sandwiched between two houses,
Mm.
and it provides shelter for the vehicles also. And it provides shelter from whatever might be out there on the road.
Right. Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it is important to look at all of the objects, the
Mhm,
garage being one for sure.
mhm.
And also garages, like downstairs, are places that we store things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the presence of the garage and it being sandwiched in between these things is what's inside that garage. And is that what the invitation to healing is for? Because I also like what you said in your notes about that there was a little bit of resentment that you had asked and that your husband had just taken.
Uh-huh.
And there's definitely a dynamic there. There's
Mhm,
definitely something about the how do we meet our needs? Because what is the when I asked you about the semi and what is the purpose of the semi, it's to supply the demand of the consumer.
right. Mhm,
And so your words choice of the importance of that object is echoed in the exchange that happens with the clothing, the demand and the need, and how that is supplied, and
mhm,
whether it's taken or whether it's requested, and
mhm.
how it's
Yeah.
obtained.
Right.
And when we look at the progression of the actions, and we just take a little pieces of the actions. We start with coming downstairs, trying to decide, walking through, feeling fine, driving, ominous, not sure, arriving, entering in the back door, concerned, move behind where it won't be seen, ask, and then healer,
Mhm,
someone who improves his home, is one of the ways that you described him, as well
mhm,
as, very importantly and prolifically, a soul brother. So there is that invitation to overcome that concern and that isolation by healing through and finding that security and that comfort, and reconciling the opposites of asking and taking and how
mhm.
that's attained. So now I'm going to pull you a card and see what the cards have to say.
Right.
Okay, so we have first light, beginning a new cycle.
Mhm. Okay.
And what we see on here is a very bright, I want to say it's the sun, but it could be the moon.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's a wintry scene at the bottom, but on the top, it's totally spring. We got the bird in the nest
Yes.
with the eggs.
It's perfect.
Yes.
Okay, I tell you more about that too.
Yes. Okay. And there may be a lot of other things here that you see. There's the flower that is beginning to bloom here. So there's a lot of a different imagery here. It's going from the snowy mountains to that growth, that the eggs waiting to be hatched, the spring, the opening of the flowers.
Yeah. Well, when I see the pine tree down at the bottom, I mean, that was very indicative of New Hampshire, very snowy, cold country, and having moved to Asheville, North Carolina, much more and of a feminine energy. And New Hampshire and northern New Hampshire in particular, very masculine energy with the granite state and the granite mountains and yeah.
Mm.
And yeah, and so and that's certainly beginning a new cycle, newly married, and waiting for Pierre's green card to come in, and green card representative of growth, also green. And for the nest is really significant with the eggs because I felt Pierre coming in for a year before we met. I wasn't looking for him, but I felt him. And then whenever I would take a walk, I would hear mourning doves and see mourning doves and say, thank you. I know he's coming in. And then after we met in Mexico, where it was very warm and very sunny, and I came back home, the mourning doves had built a nest on my windowsill. And yeah, so yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So the first light also, when I asked you to describe the home in the first dream and how it was different from Henry's real house,
Yeah.
you said that it was very bright and very light.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's very much that representation there too.
Right. Very
So,
true. Mm.
well, wonderful. I thank you so much for sharing your dream with everyone. I hope you enjoyed the insights and let everyone know where they can find you online if they want to explore more of what you have to offer.
Sure. Thank you, Mega Mary. Yeah. So people can find me at fearlesshealers.com. And I provide complimentary consultations as well as the possibility of what's called a truth transmission, which is it's an intuitive session and energy session, healing session. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today again. And thank you for sharing your dream with everyone.
Thank you so much. It was just a total blast. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to my podcast now to ensure you never miss an episode filled with insights and wisdom. Head over to my YouTube channel where I share daily shorts and full podcast videos. Hit that subscribe button and be part of our growing community. Are you ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey? Don't miss out on the Women's Dream Empowerment Program, a unique opportunity for you to connect with your intuition, unlock your inner wisdom, and align with your higher self through dream work, personalized meditations, and healing sound frequencies. Finally, I want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this episode, please reach out. If you'd like your dream or awakening story featured on my show, submit it today. Your dreams have the power to inspire and enlighten other women on their journey. Visit womensdreamanalysis.com to find out more.